Hi, and welcome to another installment of Nathan's Network of Neuroscience. This week's topic will be all about human-machine interfaces, or HMIs. A HMI is a mechanism or piece of equipment that allows communication between an individual and a piece of machinery. This can be a piece of hardware and/or software that can handle biological input to achieve a desired result. For example, current everyday pieces of human-machine interfaces can include smartphones, smartwatches, and keyboards, not to mention countless others. What's their importance and why are we talking about them? According to a marketing report by Market Research Future, the estimated financial growth of HMIs is expected to reach, in the year 2026, $7.24 billion US dollars, which just goes to show the value that researchers and investors place on the importance of HMIs and the resources that should be placed into developing this area. Additionally, recent technological advancements have progressed the medical industry significantly via restoration of individual deficit through the use of HMIs, and also our ability to install, interact, and command specific inputs into HMIs that ultimately make one's life easier. With new and improved HMIs, we now have access to treatment and management methods that involve systems for sensory compensation and the controlling of newly installed prosthetic limbs. The successful development of HMIs provides a promising future for treatment and management for a great number of diseases, spinal cord injuries, paralysis, stroke, or loss of limb patients, to name a few, and has implications for improving health on a wide-reaching global scale. A particular area of HMIs that is drawing extreme interest and potential is brain-machine interfaces, or BMIs. To better understand BMIs, we need to better understand the brain in regards to motor output. The region of the brain responsible for motor control is the primary motor cortex, located here in Area 4, in the posterior portion of the frontal lobe just along the central sulcus. The motor output, or demand, seen by increased neuronal activity, is sent from the primary motor cortex to the cerebellum and basal ganglia, where it is fine-tuned so that the end movement is a coordinated and accurate movement in regards to direction, force, and duration of movement, and is then sent back to the primary motor cortex via the thalamus. The final desired output is then sent down the spinal cord via the motor neurons to the peripheral nervous system and the muscles to be activated. BMIs are typically made up of three components: a sensor to record these neuronal electrical signals and output, typically done via electrodes. Secondly, a processor. This processor is designed to decode this information and retrieve its meaningful outputs. And thirdly, an effector, such as a computer cursor or a robotic limb, or aka a neuroprosthetic. In the case of neuroprosthetic BMIs, these are systems that allow two-way communication between the brain and the prosthetic. They can bypass, modulate, supplement, or even replace regions in the brain and its connections to the body that are damaged or dysfunctional, for example, through congenital abnormalities, injuries to the brain and spinal cord, paralysis, limb loss, neuropsychiatric disorders, and neurodegenerative diseases. These neuroprosthetics can generate, improve, or even restore sensory, motor, and cognitive function. Millions of people worldwide experience some sort of disfigurement due to cancers, defects, or trauma that can lead to significant psychological, social, and physiological disadvantage. When there is a sudden increase or decrease in stimulation that the brain receives, the function and structure of the brain begins to change. In an example of loss of limb, the nerves that control sensation and movement are severed, causing dramatic changes in the areas of the brain that control these nerves and functions. For example, neurons normally responsible for motor control of that now missing limb undergo neuroplastic changes through the now destimulation of those neurons. This is evident through N-acetylaspartate, NAA, which is a glutamate neurotransmitter and chemical associated with neuronal health, is significantly lower in this part of the brain responsible for the injury in question, though some studies have shown that these affected areas begin to take on new tasks, represented by other bodily parts of those neighboring the deprived cortex. This is further reiterated by the central nervous system theory, which explains that cortical reorganization is the most frequent reason for existence or the development of phantom pain, and extensive experimental evidence has shown that somatosensory and cortical motors undergo such neuroplastic changes. Current limitations around BMIs and HMIs include sensory-based systems, invasive surgery methods for installation, as surface EMGs aren't a strong enough signal, tissue response after implementation, and some neuroplasticity barriers. The future directions for the neuroprosthetics area of HMIs is for the installation of sensory input mechanisms from the prosthetic back to the individual. Though this has already begun being researched and implemented, it is still in its early stages and is yet yielding promising results. To conclude, on a global scale, human and BMIs are vital components of everyday life for many people, restoring lost functionality and improving quality of life, and hence further research and investigation should be resourced to make BMIs more efficient and accessible. Thanks for attending today. I'm your host Nathan, and I hope to see you next week for another installment of Nathan's Network of Neuroscience.